She was born beneath the burning Bombay sun, a city that never slept and never forgave. Her name was Divya Bharti, a girl whose laughter could fill an empty room, whose eyes carried the brightness of 1,000 unspoken dreams. She wasn't born into privilege or fame. She was born into a middle-class family, where simplicity reigned, and dreams were whispered in between the static of radio songs and the clinking of steel plates at dinner. Her father, Om Prakash Bharti, was a humble man who believed in discipline. Her mother, Meeta, carried in her heart the quiet ambition that one day her daughter might be seen, not just noticed. As a child, Divya was restless, full of spirit, impatient with the ordinary. Teachers would complain that she talked too much, that her imagination was far too wild. But in her mother's eyes, that spark was something divine. There was something celestial about her presence, as if the universe had chosen her for a brief but brilliant purpose. It began, as most legends do, by accident. At the age of 14, she was spotted by filmmaker Nandu Tolani in a school event. He saw in her what the rest of the world had yet to, a rare radiance, a raw magic that couldn't be taught. Offers started to come, first small, then serious. She was introduced to the world of lights, camera, and illusion, the dream factory of Indian cinema. Her debut was supposed to be in a film called Gunahon Ka Devta alongside Sanjay Dutt. But fate, always unpredictable, turned away at the last moment. The film never materialized for her, and doors that once seemed open now felt bolted shut. For most, this would have been the end. But Divya was not most. She carried a strange conviction for someone so young, a belief that what was meant for her could not be taken away. Her journey took her to the south. The Tamil and Telugu film industries embraced her when Bollywood hesitated. In 1990, she starred in Bobbili Raja opposite Venkatesh, and India took notice. The film exploded in popularity, making her an overnight sensation in Andhra Pradesh. Audiences were hypnotized by her blend of innocence and mischief. She was not just acting, she was breathing life into every frame. Directors called her a natural. Cameramen whispered that she didn't need lighting, her face carried its own. Fans described her as something between an angel and a storm. She could go from laughter to tears within a heartbeat, from childlike playfulness to mature emotion in a single breath. Her talent seemed too vast for her age. By 17, Divya was already working in multiple languages: Tamil, Telugu, Hindi. She would shoot for one film in Hyderabad, take a late-night train, and appear in another set in Bombay the very next morning. Her energy was boundless. Her will, unbreakable. She was a comet, fast, brilliant, impossible to ignore. And yet, in the quiet moments between shoots, she remained the same girl from school, scribbling dreams in a notebook, humming songs she loved, teasing her makeup artists, asking for roadside chai instead of the catered coffee. Those who met her off-screen often said she was too real for this industry. Perhaps that was her greatest charm, and her greatest tragedy. Her father worried she was moving too fast, that fame was a fire no one could hold for long. But Divya would only smile and say, "Papa, stars are meant to burn." In just a few years, she had crossed the fragile bridge from ordinary life to cinematic immortality. She wasn't merely acting anymore, she was defining what it meant to be a new kind of heroine, young, bold, unpredictable, luminous. But as every legend knows, the brighter the light, the darker the shadows it casts. And in Divya's case, the shadows were already gathering, quietly, invisibly, waiting for their moment to fall. By the time Divya Bharti returned to Bombay, she was no longer the curious schoolgirl from the suburbs. She was a name whispered in film studios, a face pinned on teenage bedroom walls, a dream that belonged to millions. She had conquered the South, and now, the gates of Bollywood opened for her like a prophecy finally fulfilled. Her first major Hindi release, Vishwatma, came in 1992. It wasn't just a movie, it was a coronation. The song, Saat Samundar Par, played everywhere, in cars, weddings, markets, radios, and hearts. Her dance, her smile, the mischievous sparkle in her eyes, India was mesmerized. For the first time in years, Bollywood had found a heroine who didn't fit into the mold. She was not the demigirl next door, nor the femme fatale. She was something in between, raw, alive, unpredictable. In a single year, she appeared in more than a dozen films: Deewana, Shola aur Shaban, Dil Ashna Hai, Rang, Geet, and more. Critics couldn't keep up. The industry had never seen a rise so meteoric. It was as if she was racing against time itself. Producers would say they'd never seen anyone so professional, so full of light. She could cry without glycerin, laugh without a cue, and capture the soul of a scene in one take. Her co-stars, Shah Rukh Khan, Govinda, Rishi Kapoor, all remembered her as fearless and playful, unbothered by hierarchies or egos. On sets, she was the youngest in age, but often the most magnetic in presence. Cameras seemed to love her, but more than that, the people behind them did too. Success in Bollywood is a double-edged sword. It gives, but it also takes. Divya was everywhere, her posters, her interviews, her songs. But with every flashbulb, the line between her real self and her screen persona blurred a little more. She began to carry the weight of expectation, the silent pressure to stay perfect, to remain the nation's new darling. She was earning more than actors twice her age, but she still walked barefoot on set during breaks, her laughter echoing down empty hallways. Fame hadn't changed her essence, yet those close to her began to notice a subtle exhaustion in her smile, the kind that comes when your dreams come true too fast. Reporters adored her. Magazines called her Bollywood's meteor, the next Sridevi, India's Cinderella. And yet, behind those dazzling headlines, there was a girl barely 18, still learning who she was, still clinging to pieces of normalcy. Her mother would bring her lunch to film sets. Her friends from school would call her Divya the superstar in jest, and she'd roll her eyes and ask about their exams. In Deewana, her chemistry with Shah Rukh Khan and Rishi Kapoor turned the film into a phenomenon. The movie's title, meaning Crazy in Love, became a mirror for the nation's obsession with her. She won the Filmfare Award for Best Female Debut, and the applause that followed her name that night seemed endless. But even as the applause echoed, there was something haunting about her trajectory, a sense that she was sprinting through a destiny that wouldn't wait. She shot scenes through fevers, learned scripts overnight, danced through pain. Directors begged her to slow down, she never did. "Time is short," she once told a journalist. "I want to do everything while I can." No one understood then how prophetic those words would become. Rumors began to swirl, stories about her temper, her boldness, her independence. But those who knew her best said she wasn't difficult, she was simply too alive, too passionate for an industry built on control. At her peak, she had more than 20 films in production, a record few could match. She was everywhere, and yet nowhere truly at rest. Her friends recalled late-night phone calls, where she'd ask strange questions about destiny and purpose. "Do you think we know when something big is about to happen?" she once whispered to a friend. "I feel like my life is moving faster than it should." The girl who once dreamed in secret was now the brightest flame of Indian cinema. But flames, no matter how dazzling, always flicker in the wind. By 1993, Divya Bharti was standing on the highest point of her career, adored by audiences, envied by rivals, cherished by filmmakers. She had it all. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. Because behind the light, something else had entered her story. Something quieter, tender, but fated to change everything. It was love, the kind that feels like destiny, but often ends like a storm. It began quietly, not like a headline, but like a whisper between two hearts. On a film set buzzing with lights and noise, Divya met a man named Sajid Nadiadwala. He wasn't an actor, he was a producer, calm where she was fire, composed where she was chaos. They met while shooting Shola aur Shaban, a movie that mirrored, in strange ways, the passion and turbulence that would define their story. Sajid was older, mature, part of a world that seemed steady and deliberate. Divya was only 18, still tasting the sweetness of fame, still dizzy from her own rising star. But when she spoke to him, something shifted. He listened. Not to the actress, but to the girl behind her. For a brief moment, she felt seen not as Divya Bharti the celebrity, but as Divya, the daughter, the dreamer, the child who still called her mother after every shoot. Their connection deepened quietly, away from gossip columns and cameras. They would talk for hours, about films, about family, about the loneliness that hides behind applause. For the first time in years, she found peace in someone's presence. She called him her anchor. He called her his light. But in India's film industry of the early 90s, love between a Hindu actress and a Muslim producer was not just love, it was defiance. The tabloids would have turned it into fire, the kind that burns careers and reputations alike. So they kept their relationship private. They would meet in quiet corners, send letters through assistants, exchange glances when no one was watching. And then, one evening in 1992, they decided they didn't want to hide anymore. In a small ceremony at Sajid's Versova apartment, with only a handful of witnesses, Divya Bharti became Divya Nadiyadwala. There were no grand wedding photos, no flashing cameras. Just a promise, whispered beneath dim lights, between two people who believed their love could outshine the world's noise. She continued her work as if nothing had changed, hiding her wedding ring during shoots, keeping her new life secret even from close friends. Her mother, protective and devoted, stood torn, wanting her daughter's happiness, yet fearing what the secrecy meant. Divya was barely 19, balancing the weight of superstardom and the fragility of a hidden marriage. For Sajid, she was unpredictable, radiant one day, restless the next. For Divya, he was safety in a world that constantly demanded more of her. Yet their love, as passionate as it was, carried shadows. Her schedule was relentless. She was filming 3 movies at once, dancing through exhaustion, traveling across cities without pause. Sajid would beg her to slow down. She would laugh, toss her hair, and say, "You can't stop the wind." In interviews, she spoke little about her personal life, but her friends noticed a soft glow around her, and also, sometimes, an unspoken sadness. Fame had given her everything except freedom. Even in love, she was trapped between 2 worlds, one of dreams and one of reality. Those close to her began to worry. Her moods shifted. She would burst into laughter one moment and fall into silence the next. She seemed caught in an invisible storm of love, pressure, ambition, and something deeper, something harder to name. Her mother recalled one night when Divya returned home late, her eyes swollen from tears. She wouldn't say why. She simply sat on the balcony, staring at the city lights below, whispering, "They all think they know me, but no one really does." She wanted to start producing films herself, to step behind the camera, to control her art rather than be controlled by it. Sajid supported her dream. Together, they began discussing a future built not on fame, but on creation. They even started planning a film under their own banner. But destiny had its own screenplay, one she would never finish reading. In the months that followed, Divya's energy returned. Friends said she seemed lighter, almost serene. She was signing new films, planning trips, even talking about hosting family dinners. It felt as if life was finally beginning to slow down, to give her a chance to breathe. Then came the evening of 5th April 1993. A night that began with laughter, with plans, with life, and ended with silence that India has never stopped hearing. 5th April 1993, a night that began like any other in the restless city of Bombay. The monsoon had not yet arrived, but the air carried a strange heaviness, the kind that often precedes a storm. Inside a 5th-floor apartment in Tulsi Buildings, Versova, Divya Bharti laughed with her friends, designer Neeta Lulla and Neetha's husband, Shyam. Sajid was not home, he had gone to meet a director. Music played softly in the background. The young actress, only 19, was full of energy, talking about her next film shoot, a new role, a dress she wanted to wear. It was a simple, ordinary evening, until it wasn't. Sometime around 11 p.m., laughter faded into confusion. Moments that should have been forgettable became immortal in tragedy. In a flash, the rising star, the angel of Bollywood, fell from her balcony. Neighbors heard the sound before they understood what it was. Some said it was a thud. Others said it was a scream. Within minutes, chaos replaced laughter. She was rushed to Cooper Hospital, the nearest one. Her mother arrived breathless, tears already streaming, refusing to believe the words being whispered around her. "She's fine," she kept saying. "She'll open her eyes any moment." But Divya never did. At 12:45 a.m., doctors declared her dead. Cause: head injuries from a fall. The news spread like wildfire across the city. Reporters stormed the hospital. Crowds gathered outside. The nation that had watched her rise couldn't comprehend her fall. How could someone so alive, so luminous, be gone in an instant? The newspapers the next morning bore one headline: Divya Bharti dies in mysterious circumstances. And thus began one of Bollywood's most haunting mysteries. The police called it an accident, a tragic fall from her balcony. But soon, whispers began. People questioned how someone so young and full of life could simply fall. Was she sitting on the ledge? Was she leaning out? Was she pushed? Or did something deeper, darker happen that night? The apartment became a scene of speculation. Some claimed she had been drinking, others denied it. Some said she had argued with someone before falling, others said she was happy, laughing moments before. No one could agree. The official version said she slipped while trying to adjust the curtains or talk to a worker below. But the mystery grew when inconsistencies appeared in statements. Witnesses changed their accounts. The investigation, like so many in India's history, soon faded into fog. Sajid, devastated, refused to speak publicly. He was a man broken, avoiding cameras, avoiding questions. He stayed silent for years, his grief visible in every photograph. To this day, he maintains that what happened that night was nothing more than a terrible accident. But India wasn't ready to accept that. The public needed answers. They needed a villain. Theories multiplied. Some tabloids suggested foul play. Others hinted at connections to the underworld, that Divya had unknowingly gotten too close to dangerous circles through her husband's film connections. No evidence ever proved it, but the speculation refused to die. There were also darker whispers, that perhaps the pressure had become too much, that fame and secrecy had taken a toll too heavy to bear. Yet those who knew her best rejected this completely. They said she was full of plans, full of light, and would never have chosen to leave this world. In the following days, thousands of fans flooded her funeral, a sea of tears and disbelief. The streets outside her home were jammed for hours. Women wept openly. Men stood silent, their faces pale with shock. In the chaos of mourning, her body was taken for cremation, wrapped in white, her face serene, untouched by the storm that had surrounded her final hours. As the flames rose, so did the myths. Some claimed they saw her smile in the smoke. Others swore her spirit lingered, too restless, too unfinished to leave. Her films still filled theaters, and for months after her death, posters of her unreleased movies continued to appear. India was watching a ghost perform on screen, a young woman who, in death, refused to fade. The police closed the case as accidental death. No charges. No trial. No closure. But for a nation that had loved her, accident was never enough. Questions hung in the air like the scent of rain that never came. Why was she standing so close to the balcony edge? Why was she alone for that brief moment? Why did every witness remember the scene differently? And why, 30 years later, does no one truly know what happened on that April night? The mystery became her second identity, the tragic, beautiful enigma of Divya Bharti. Her fans began calling her the lost angel of Bollywood, a star who fell too soon, a light swallowed by the shadows of her own fame. Time has a way of softening pain, but not this one. 3 decades have passed since that April night, yet the name Divya Bharti still carries the same ache, the same unspoken question. In India, where stars are worshipped and myths are born from tragedy, she became more than a memory, she became a legend suspended in time. Every year, on 5th April, her fans gather online and in old cinema halls, posting photos, sharing songs, replaying the fragments of a life that never got to grow old. They call her the Forever 19. For them, she never aged, never changed, always radiant, always alive somewhere between real and reality. In the years that followed her death, Bollywood tried to move on, but it never quite did. Directors would mention her in hushed tones. Had Divya lived, she would have ruled this industry. Actresses who came after her admitted to modeling their energy, their screen presence, their freedom after her. But none could capture the same mixture of innocence and fire, of grace and rebellion. Her unfinished films were released posthumously, Rang, Shatranj, Kshatriya, and when audiences saw her on screen, laughter and tears mingled in the darkness of theaters. It was cinema's cruel magic, seeing the dead still move, still smile, still love. For many, those films were not entertainment, but a haunting farewell. Her husband, Sajid Nadiadwala, eventually returned to filmmaking, building one of Bollywood's most powerful production houses. He rarely speaks about her, but when he does, his words are simple: "She changed my life. She was a miracle." It is said he keeps her photo in his office, not as a relic of pain, but as a quiet reminder of the beginning, of the girl who turned his world to light and loss in equal measure. Her mother, Meeta Bharti, withdrew from the spotlight completely. She kept Divya's room the same for years, her posters, her perfume bottles, her notebooks, untouched. In one of those notebooks, she had once written, "If I ever go away suddenly, I hope they remember me with a smile, not a tear." But that wish, perhaps, was too fragile for a country that loved her too much. Even today, young Indians who weren't even born when she lived, discover her through clips on YouTube, through grainy interviews where she laughs, teases the host, plays with her hair. They see her and feel something familiar, a spirit too vivid to belong to the past. The comments always say the same thing: why did she have to go? And maybe that's what keeps her alive, the unanswered question. The uncertainty became her immortality. Every theory, every retelling, every documentary like this one, is another attempt to bring her back, if only in words. For the investigators, the file is closed. For her family, the story is private. But for millions of people, it remains open, an open wound wrapped in melody and memory. Her story taught Bollywood a cruel lesson, that brilliance and fragility often walk hand in hand. That sometimes, the brightest stars burn out before they can fade. And that art, at its core, is not about how long you shine, but how deeply you leave your mark. If Divya had lived, she might have become one of the greatest actresses of her generation. But in dying young, she became something else, eternal. Her life froze at its most luminous moment, untouched by time, unspoiled by decline. In the end, that's perhaps what destiny chose for her, not longevity, but legend. India still mourns her, not only for the loss of talent, but for the loss of possibility, the films she never made, the woman she never became, the truths she never got to tell. Her story is retold every few years, in whispers, in documentaries, in faded magazine scans. Each version ends the same way: a balcony, a fall, a silence. And then, her smile, frozen forever on screen, defying gravity, defying death. They called her Divya, which in Sanskrit means divine. And maybe that's what she truly was, something too pure, too fleeting for this world. When the lights fade and the screen turns black, what remains is not just sorrow. It's awe. The awe of witnessing a soul that burned so brightly that even after 30 years, her light still reaches us, across memory, across mystery, across time. Because angels, even the lost ones, never truly disappear.